This iPad case is a great beginner project, or it's just a fun project if you've been sewing forever and want something a little more simpler and something that like whips up fast. This is the project for you. So you're not going to need too many things for this project. You're going to want 2 pieces of contrasting fabric, and I cut these rectangles. I think this was a 10.5 by 11.5, but you measure your iPad or your book and decide how big you want this, but just remember that you're going to want to add some seam allowance too. And I think I did about a 1/2 inch for seam allowance. You're also going to want some fusible fleece interfacing. This is what gives the satchel the thick protection. And you're also going to want a snap set because that's how we close it at the end. Okay, so then go ahead and cut out the rectangle. And if you folded it over like I did, don't forget to cut open the side so that it's not flopped over like a book. And do this on both pieces of your fabric. So you should at the end have 4 pieces of fabric that are 10.5 by 11.5 inches. Okay, so then you're gonna cut your fusible fleece interfacing, and you wanna make these pieces a little smaller. I would say about the seam allowance width smaller. So I'm gonna make these like 1/2 inch. Actually, I'm sorry. I think this was about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm gonna make this like a 1/4 inch smaller, and you're gonna want 4 rectangles of the fusible fleece interfacing. So you have your 4 pieces of fabric, the lining and the outside of the satchel, and then your 4 pieces of fusible interfacing. Now we are going to iron the fusible fleece onto the pieces of fabric, and I don't have my regular ironing board with me at the moment, so I am going to use this piece of wood that is covered by fabric. So yes, this is smaller, it's not ideal, but this is what I have to work with today. So the way fusible interfacing works is there's a soft side and then there's like a plasticky feeling side. And that is because the plasticky side is glue that melts onto the fabric with heat. So put the plastic side to the wrong side of your material and flip your piece of fabric over so that you are ironing on the top side of your fabric. You don't want to iron directly on top of the soft part of the fusible fleece because you can risk melting or messing up your iron, which I unfortunately did. So I'm trying to figure out how to get the glue off, but in the meantime, it's still working and I'm not like spreading the glue on the outside of the fabric. So I think it's fine for now. So you want to make sure that your iron is not set too high because it will melt things and make everything a disaster. But if it's too low, then it's not really going to melt the fabric enough and then it's not going to stick properly. So I usually find that like halfway between like the cotton and the satin, around the wool setting, I think is a good spot for the iron to be at. So then figure out what fabric you want to be on the outside and which fabric you want to be the lining. Then with both pieces, you're going to put right sides together and pin them in the center so that they don't move. And this is my outside of the satchel. So I'm going to sew 3 sides. And then the second piece is going to be the lining. So I'm going to sew 2 sides and then part of the bottom, but leave the middle of the bottom open. And I will mark this out with pins so that I remember what not to sew over. And then so this is the outside of my satchel and I am sewing down the long side and then I sew the bottom and then I sew the other long side and I leave the top open. And then again with the lining, I'm sewing the 2 long sides and the bottom, but leaving the middle of the bottom open where I have it marked with pins. Also, make sure that when you're sewing, you do the reverse stitch as you start your project. So start sewing, then reverse it back, and then continue sewing down to the bottom. So when you're finished, cut your threads and then cut the corners of the bottoms, but be careful that you don't cross through the seams and then, cause a hole. As you can see on one of the pieces, this little brown circle right here, that is what happens when you burn the interfacing. It melted a little bit. It left a stain on my iron and it melted the interfacing. So try not to do that. So then you're going to turn the outside of your satchel right side out, and you're going to place it inside the satchel of the lining and match the corners up inside. I like to get the corners as pointy as possible, so I stick a pair of scissors in there and just poke it out. So once the outside is inside the lining, make sure that you line up the side seams and then press them open with your fingers. You don't have to iron it, and go ahead and pin the sides together. This makes sure that everything sits nice and even and doesn't move, and it comes out much more symmetrical. And then go ahead and pin the perimeter of the top. I like to take the tray part off the machine just so it makes a little more room and I can stick the arm inside the pouch. Take this slow and make sure the pieces line up next to each other as you're sewing, and that the seams are still lined up on top of each other when you get to them. Okay, now clip your threads and you're going to pull the outside through the bottom hole of the lining. It's kind of hard to explain, but it all works out. Okay, you can see that I pulled the outside all the way through the lining, which then exposed the lining, and I like to get my scissors in there and poke out the corners. And then the next step is sewing up the hole in the bottom of this lining piece. So as best as you can, kind of fold in the fabric to make a cleaner edge, pin it, and then you can sew it. Okay, so as you can see, I sewed up the hole and now I am going to manipulate the lining to fit inside the outside. Okay, so now you have a nice stiff case and you are going to stick the arm of the sewing machine inside the bag like we did previously, except now we're going to top stitch in a circle around the opening. Take this nice and slow as well, and make sure that you're kind of pushing the lining in with your right hand so that it doesn't like slip up and come past the outside fabric. Okay, we have made the iPad case or bookcase or whatever you want to use it for, and now we are going to put a little snap closure on top. So find the very center of your case and mark it, whether that's with a pin or a little chalk mark, just something so you know where to place the snaps. So if you've never done snaps before, it's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's not impossible. So I will try to explain, but just watch and kind of like figure it out. It will make sense once you start doing it. Okay, so you're gonna wanna get your one snap piece that has spikes on it, and you're gonna kind of push it through the fabric. Ideally, you wanna see the spikes come out the other side, but when there's a lot of layers, you can't always see the spikes. You just see like the raised fabric where the spikes are. As long as you can kind of seat the other snap piece on top, so it kind of like, it should like not clip on, but it should just be able to sit nicely on top. And then you have the little squishy tool, and then you can clamp it down, and hopefully the snap will stay. So sometimes the snaps will slide as you clamp down and then they don't stick properly, so you have to start it over. But these ended up being just fine, and I like to open and close it a couple times to make sure they're gonna stay, and I even try to pick out the snap with my fingers just to see if it's really in there. And this, like I said, was a good snap session, so we don't have to redo anything. And yeah, it's pretty simple. And there you have it. There's your case, and yeah, it was simple, it was fun, and it kind of looks more complicated than it is.